fired from the crowd. Earlier, I spoke to some people. They said that he was walking through the crowd, talking to people. He apparently grew up in this area. But I think the real difference, we'll see a difference if what happens tonight. If it's anything like last night, then I can't imagine it'll be much different unless they're not firing rubber bullets and not firing canisters of tear gas into the crowd, which we don't expect. But once nightfall hits in Ferguson, with this crowd growing, and you just never know how it'll turn out.
Yes, well, Yamiche, I guess that's the question. Is so much has been happening sort of when the sun goes down the last 5 or 6 nights out there. What are you expecting tonight in terms of a police reaction to it based on the changes that were made today?
I think people are really, and me, we're all expecting kind of much of the same in terms of the idea that people are not going to stop protesting. People are not going to go home. I think a lot of people here are really fed up. I talked to a man today who said, we're happy that the St. Louis County Police are not here anymore, but understand that we are united and that we are frustrated and that this officer's name needs to be released. They also want the officer to be charged with murder. So people have real issues here. They have real things that they want to happen. So I think changing the police is going to hopefully maybe help people understand that this is a different regime, that maybe things will be a little bit calmer. But in fact, people still have the exact same grievances. So we have to keep that in mind when we think about what's going to happen tonight. People are still mad that a young unarmed black man was shot in Ferguson.
Well, today, Ferguson Police Chief Thomas Jackson described the situation as a powder keg. He defended the response from police, but also acknowledged that they need a new plan.
What's happening now is not what any of us want. Last night, we started getting rocks, bricks, bottles thrown at us, and then a Molotov cocktail, and then gunfire went off. We need to get everyone to calm down and try to bring some peace to this. We want everybody to be able to protest. We know they're going to protest. We want to facilitate their ability to protest.
Well, Tremaine, let me go back to you on that, because this is the line we've heard. We hear it right there from the police department, that last night the police were under attack. It was the Molotov cocktails, bricks being thrown at them. You're on the ground there. What you're hearing from the police about what they're saying the protesters are doing to them, what you're hearing from them, does that square with what you're seeing on the ground?
From my vantage point, about 35 feet away from where the first canisters were fired, I didn't see any rocks being thrown. I didn't see any Molotov cocktails. Indeed, someone did throw something at one of the police vehicles, and I heard it kind of bounce off the truck just a moment before they ordered the crowd to disperse. But again, my vantage point was mine. From everything that I've seen, it was a mostly peaceful protest. Now, there were some people in the crowd who were belligerent, who were increasingly angry, but that was by and large just the small minority of people who came out and overall protested peacefully last night.
Yeah, and Yamiche, I wonder too, the response you see from the crowd there. We've talked so much about I guess the term we use is the militarization of the police. You have these officers walking around, camouflage, heavily armed, almost looks like we said a war zone over there. What effect does that have on the crowds?
I think I have an anecdote. I think last night I was at the Ferguson police station, and there were probably about 50 protesters there, and they weren't throwing rocks, they weren't doing anything. The crowd started getting late. At 2:30 in the morning, the St. Louis County Police showed up in tanks. There were about 4 tanks and about 60 officers, so more officers than protesters, saying, we want a non-violent protest. We want you to put down your weapons. We want you to put down your rocks. And that was when people really got fired up. That's when I saw people really get upset. So I think that when the cops were telling people, this is how you need to act, this is what you need to do, you need to make sure you're not non-violent, that's when people really got upset. That's when people really felt like they were being profiled, because I think before that the crowd was pretty calm. So I think there's really something to be said there. I talked to the St. Louis NAACP today, and they said that we really need to make sure that the police are not coming expecting the worst and then creating the worst.
Well, President Obama today talked about the need for people in positions of authority to hold themselves to high standards. He also criticized people who would use this tragedy as a cover for vandalism and looting.
Of course, it's important to remember how this started. We lost a young man, Michael Brown, in heartbreaking and tragic circumstances. He was 18 years old. His family will never hold Michael in their arms again. And when something like this happens, the local authorities, including the police, have a responsibility to be open and transparent about how they are investigating that death and how they are protecting the people in their communities. there is never an excuse for violence against police or for those who would use this tragedy as a cover for vandalism or looting. There's also no excuse for police to use excessive force against peaceful protests or to throw protesters in jail for lawfully exercising their First Amendment rights.
Perry Bacon, let me bring you in here. We know whenever there's, a contentious issue, really anywhere in the country, there's always a lot of conversation in the White House about whether, when, and how the president, can or should speak out about it. In terms of this particular situation and the remarks we got from the president today, what do we know about the deliberations that were going on in the White House in terms of why they chose today to speak and what specific message they wanted to send today?
I think last night's events, with the tear gas and the particular intensity of last night, the reporters arrested and things that happened last night really drove them where they felt like the president had to talk today. They really felt like today was the day he had to talk. He had a statement on Tuesday, but they felt like today was the day he needed to address this personally. Now, the key thing, I think, to look at in terms of what he said was, and you've heard this from not only the president, but Attorney General Holder, Claire McCaskill, Senator, even Rand Paul, Senator, as well. There was a big focus today on tone, reducing the tone, reducing the intensity, and trying to communicate to the police officers that the militarization was a problem. The AG particularly had a very strong statement about that. The president talked about that as well.
Which one you going through
the idea that whatever's happening there, the militarization, all the tanks, the guns have sort of ratcheted up in a way that the president was trying to calm down today.
So I wonder, to go back to you, Tremaine, in Ferguson, the president's words saying Perry's describing what they were hoping to achieve. Can you see on the ground a difference, any result on the ground of what the president said today? Did it have an impact?
I talked to a number of people who hadn't even heard anything about the president's statements, and so it's unclear at this point whether it actually trickled down. Because everyone is out in the streets and not necessarily in front of their TVs, they may not be tuned in to social media. But what happened last night is the local law enforcement agencies actually created adversaries that they didn't have days ago. There were people at the local Target and then Wendy's who said, before tonight, I was kind of on the fence. But they came out with snipers, with rifles, and the chief said this was a powder keg. If so, the way law enforcement handles this could be a torch. But again, Senator McCaskill saying that today will be a new day, and national leaders and local leaders saying it's a time for peace. Tonight will tell the tale whether we really are inching forward to peace or if we're only going to escalate the situation.
All right, thank you to Tremaine Lee, Amish Alexander, in Ferguson, Perry Bacon. Appreciate that. And coming up, how police tactics have made the situation worse and what they could do to calm things down. Also covering the biggest story in the country, we'll talk to two reporters, one of whom was cuffed and arrested by police last night. Plus, President Obama, once again, first African-American president, finds himself confronting a racially charged situation. And finally, let me finish with something we haven't seen for a long time in American politics. Republican senators saying this time the police have gone too far. This is Hardball, Place for Politics.